Overnight, U.S. airstrikes hit targets in southern Iran, focusing on positions directly adjacent to the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM reports these were defensive strikes, launched to neutralize Iranian surface-to-air missile sites and the small, fast-moving vessels the regime uses to lay naval mines in international shipping lanes. These represent the first direct strikes against Iranian territory since May, and they are happening while high-level diplomatic delegations from both countries are actually on the ground in Doha. This kinetic force isn't stopping the diplomacy. It is being used to define the boundaries of the negotiation as the talks begin. Iran's traditional options for retaliation have narrowed significantly. During Operations Midnight Hammer and Epic Fury last summer, the core of their conventional military command and naval infrastructure was systematically dismantled. With much of their formal navy now sitting at the bottom of the sea, the regime has lost the ability to contest the U.S. in a standard blue water engagement. Their remaining leverage is purely asymmetric. The threat of using those small mine-laying boats to physically choke off the tankers that carry 20% of the world's petroleum through the strait. By destroying those specific vessels overnight, the U.S. has moved to physically remove that maritime threat from the board. Stripping Iran of its ability to disrupt shipping leaves the regime with fewer cards to play, forcing them to rely almost entirely on their nuclear program as a bargaining chip. This shift leads to the core diplomatic ultimatum. Iran must export, destroy, or relocate its supply of highly enriched uranium immediately. The risk begins with yellowcake, a concentrated powder processed from raw uranium ore. To become a threat, that powder is converted into a gas called hex and fed into cylindrical centrifuges. These machines spin the gas at incredible speeds. Heavier particles push to the outside, while lighter, fissile particles remain centered, gradually increasing the material's concentration. In facilities at this scale, the enrichment process is easily repeatable. This allows Iran to quickly cycle material through the centrifuges, reversing previous diplomatic steps to reach weapons-grade levels in a matter of weeks. Because the process can be ramped up so quickly within their own borders, the U.S. is demanding the physical removal of material from Iranian soil to prevent a breakout. Ensuring that removal happens requires more than just military strikes. It requires a financial hammer, which is where the mediators in Qatar come in. The U.S. is moving away from past strategies that allowed the regime access to unrestricted funds, or pallets of cash. Instead, billions of dollars in Iranian assets, currently held in Qatari banks, have been strictly frozen. Iran will receive zero sanctions relief and no access to those funds unless they adhere to every detail of the uranium export deal. U.S. negotiators are concerned that any unrestricted capital would be channeled directly back into Iran's domestic missile and drone programs. By conditioning the release of these specific billions on nuclear compliance, Washington is weaponizing Iran's own frozen capital to force a resolution. This standoff between Washington and Tehran is currently vibrating through every other conflict in the region. In Lebanon, Israel has signaled a major increase in strike intensity against Hezbollah, which remains Iran's largest and most capable regional proxy. This escalation follows a surge of drone and rocket attacks from southern Lebanon, with diplomatic efforts currently struggling to stabilize the border. The kinetic activity in the Strait of Hormuz and the strikes in Lebanon are both driven by the same fundamental friction between the U.S. and the Iranian regime. The U.S. is now operating on a dual track, using military strikes to maintain open waterways while applying extreme economic pressure through frozen assets. The timeline for these demands is rigid. The U.S. has stated that the strait must remain open and unimpeded, effective immediately. To enforce this, the administration warned that any further aggression from Iran will be met with a response far more severe than the overnight strikes. Iran now faces a definitive choice. They can agree to export their uranium supply to a third party, or they can maintain their current course and face an unprecedented military escalation.